You wake before the sun rises, in a world that feels both ancient and alive. The air is cold against your skin, carrying the distant scent of wood smoke and damp earth. Around you, the city slowly begins to stir. Somewhere nearby, a rooster breaks the silence. Wooden doors creak open. Footsteps echo softly along narrow stone streets still wet from the night. This is Europe in the year 1340, and from where you stand, everything seems to be moving forward, growing, expanding, full of life. You step outside into the early morning haze and watch as merchants prepare their stalls. Carts loaded with grain, cloth and spices roll over uneven cobblestones. Voices rise as traders call out their goods, their accents revealing journeys from distant lands. Some have come from neighboring villages, others from ports that connect this city to the vast and mysterious world beyond the sea. You don't yet realize it, but these routes, these same paths that bring wealth and opportunity, also carry something far more dangerous. As the sun climbs higher, the streets fill with movement. You walk through a crowded market where colors and smells blend into a vivid tapestry of daily life. Fresh bread is stacked in baskets, its warm aroma mixing with the sharp scent of fish laid out on wooden tables. Spices from the east, pepper, cinnamon, saffron, are measured carefully, their value higher than gold for those who can afford them. You hear laughter, arguments, bargaining. Life feels ordinary, predictable, safe. But beneath this surface there are details you might overlook. The streets are narrow, packed tightly between buildings of stone and timber. Waste is thrown into the alleys, where it gathers in dark corners. There is no system to carry it away. The smell lingers, thick and unavoidable. You step carefully to avoid the filth, but even then, your boots brush against what others have discarded. Nearby, rats move freely, slipping between barrels and crates, unnoticed or simply ignored. They are part of this world, as common as the people themselves. You pass a group of laborers carrying sacks toward a warehouse. Their clothes are worn, their faces marked by long hours of work. They speak of ships that arrived days ago, loaded with goods from distant regions, lands you have never seen, places whispered about in stories of wealth and danger. These ships are the lifeblood of the city. They bring silk, spices, metals, and ideas. They connect continents, they shape economies, and they never stop coming. In the distance, church bells begin to ring. You follow the sound and find yourself among a gathering of people entering a large stone church. Inside, the air is cooler, heavy with incense. Candles flicker against the walls as prayers are whispered in low voices. Faith is not just a belief here. It is an explanation for everything. Illness, fortune, disaster, all are seen through the lens of divine will. There is comfort in that certainty, even if it leaves questions unanswered. Because the truth is, medicine in this world is limited, uncertain, and often misunderstood. If you were to fall ill, treatments would rely on ancient theories, imbalances of bodily fluids, bloodletting, herbs with unknown effects. There are no microscopes, no understanding of bacteria, no concept of infection as you know it. Illness appears suddenly and disappears just as mysteriously. It is feared, but not understood. And because it is not understood, it cannot be truly prevented. You leave the church and walk toward the edge of the city, where the sounds of trade fade into the quieter rhythm of rural life. Farmers work the land just beyond the walls, their hands buried in soil that sustains the population within. Life here is harder, slower, tied directly to the seasons. Yet even here the influence of distant trade is felt. Goods arrive from faraway places, carried along routes that stretch across continents, routes that do not care who they serve or what they carry. By afternoon, the port becomes the center of attention. You stand near the docks and watch as ships arrive one after another, their sails heavy with the weight of long journeys. Crews unload crates filled with goods from the east. The air is filled with the sound of ropes tightening, wood creaking, and men shouting orders. The sea glimmers under the fading light, calm and indifferent. Everything here feels like progress, like connection, like the future is being built plank by plank, voyage by voyage. But if you Look closely, really closely. You might notice something else. Small movements in the shadows of the cargo, fleeting shapes slipping between sacks and barrels, creatures that traveled unseen across thousands of miles. They do not announce themselves, they do not draw attention, and yet they are there. As evening approaches, the city settles into a different rhythm. Torches are lit, conversations quiet down, families gather inside their homes, unaware of how fragile this sense of normalcy truly is. You sit in the fading light and feel the calm of a world that believes it understands itself. But beneath that calm, something is already in motion, something invisible, silent, patient. It has crossed deserts, mountains, and oceans. It has traveled inside ships welcomed into every port. It has moved through the same routes that sustain life, hidden in the very system people depend on. And as you stand there, watching the last ship dock under the dim glow of firelight, you cannot see it, but it is already here. If you want to understand how this unseen force would soon change the world forever, make sure to continue watching and uncover what happened next. At first, nothing feels different. The ships still arrive as they always have, cutting through the waters of the Mediterranean with quiet authority. You stand at the port and watch them approach, dark silhouettes against the morning light, just another part of the endless rhythm of trade that feeds the cities of Europe. Sailors shout, ropes are thrown, cargo is prepared to be unloaded. From a distance, it looks routine, familiar, safe, but something is wrong. As the first ship docks, you notice the silence. There are fewer men on deck than expected. Some lie motionless near the railings, their bodies twisted in unnatural positions. Others barely move, their strength gone. When the gangplank drops, no one rushes out. No one greets the harbor workers. Instead, a few survivors stumble forward, their faces pale, their eyes unfocused, as if something inside them is already fading. You feel it before you understand it, a quiet shift in the air, something heavy and unsettling. Word spreads quickly, the crew is sick, not just tired or injured, but something worse, something no one can name. As the cargo begins to move, so do the whispers. People step back. Some cover their faces, others continue working, unsure whether to fear what they cannot see. After all, ships bring goods, and goods mean survival. No one wants to believe that these vessels could carry anything else. But within days, the first cases appear in the city. You hear about it in fragments at first. A man collapses in the market, his body shaking with fever. A woman is found in her home, unable to stand, her skin burning to the touch. At first, it is dismissed as an isolated sickness. Illness is not uncommon. People fall sick all the time. But this feels different, faster, more aggressive. You walk through the streets and begin to notice it yourself. A boy sits slumped against a wall, his breathing shallow, his face drenched in sweat. A merchant who was shouting prices just yesterday now lies inside his shop, unable to speak. You see fear begin to replace confusion in the eyes of those around you. Something is spreading and no one knows how or why. Then the symptoms become impossible to ignore. It starts with fever, violent, overwhelming heat that takes hold of the body and refuses to let go. Then come the pains, deep and relentless, as if the body itself is turning against you. Soon after, strange swellings appear beneath the skin, dark, painful lumps forming near the neck, the armpits, the groin. They grow quickly, hard and swollen, pulsing with infection. People begin to whisper a word for them, though they do not understand them, buboes, and then death. Not slowly, not after weeks of suffering, but within days, sometimes within hours. A person who seemed strong one morning is gone by nightfall. There is no time to prepare, no time to say goodbye. Families gather around beds, watching helplessly as their loved ones fade away before their eyes. Some try to care for the sick, only to fall ill themselves soon after. You begin to see it everywhere. A man collapses in the middle of the street, his body hitting the ground with a hollow sound. No one rushes to help him. They hesitate. They watch from a distance, fear holding them in place. A woman screams from inside a house, calling for help that never comes. Doors begin to close. Windows are shuttered. The city, once alive with movement, starts to pull inward. The physicians arrive, but they bring no answers. You watch as they examine the sick, their faces hidden behind cloths soaked in herbs, believing it will protect them. They speak in uncertain tones, debating causes they cannot prove. Some say the air has become poisoned, that something unseen has corrupted the very atmosphere. Others insist it is a punishment, a divine response to human sin. Prayers increase. Processions move through the streets. People beg for mercy from a force they cannot see or understand. But nothing changes. If anything, it gets worse. The number of sick grows each day. Houses are marked. Entire families disappear behind closed doors, their fate unknown until the silence becomes permanent. The smell of death begins to creep into the streets, faint at first, then impossible to ignore. Carts start to move more frequently, carrying bodies away. There are too many to bury properly. You feel the shift in behavior around you. Where there was once trust, there is now suspicion. People avoid each other. Friends keep their distance. Even within families, fear takes hold. Some abandon the sick, unable to face the risk. Others stay knowing what it might cost them. Every cough, every fever becomes a sign, a warning. The city is changing, and it is happening faster than anyone can comprehend. You return to the port, hoping for answers, but the ships keep coming. More vessels arrive, each carrying new goods and more sickness. The pattern becomes impossible to deny. Wherever the ships dock, the illness follows. It moves silently from harbor to street, from street to home, from home to body. There is no barrier, no protection, no understanding strong enough to stop it. And still, no one knows what it truly is. You stand at the edge of the water as another ship is pulled into the harbor, its sails worn, its crew barely visible. The sun sets behind it, casting long shadows across the dock. For a moment, everything is still, quiet, almost peaceful. But you know better now. This is no longer just a series of isolated events. It is something larger, something unstoppable. What began as whispers has become a reality that no one can escape. And the most terrifying part is this: it is only the beginning. If you want to witness how this invisible force spreads across entire continents and brings society to the brink of collapse, stay with me, because what comes next will change everything. It no longer feels like a sickness confined to a single city. What you are witnessing has begun to move, silently but relentlessly, spreading across roads, rivers, and trade routes that once symbolized prosperity. Now those same routes carry something far more devastating. You hear it in every conversation, in every hurried whisper, towns falling one after another, entire regions overtaken in a matter of weeks. The distance that once separated. Danger from safety has collapsed. There is no far away anymore. You travel through a nearby road and notice the absence of life where there should be movement. Villages that once echoed with voices now sit in unnatural silence. Doors remain open, abandoned mid-routine as if people vanished in the middle of their lives. In some homes, meals are left untouched on wooden tables. In others, the stillness is heavier, filled with the unmistakable presence of death. You don't need to step inside to understand what happened. The disease does not slow down, it accelerates. In the cities, the scale becomes impossible to ignore. You walk through streets that were once crowded and vibrant, now lined with bodies left where they fell. Some are covered hastily with cloth, others are not covered at all. The living move quickly, avoiding contact, avoiding eye contact, avoiding anything that might connect them to what they fear most. Every step feels like a calculation. Where to walk, who to avoid, how long to stay outside. The soundscape has changed. Where there was once trade and conversation, now there are distant cries, the rumble of carts, and the hollow echo of emptiness. Bells ring more often, not for celebration, but to mark the passing of lives, over and over again. The repetition becomes unbearable. You begin to lose track of time because each day feels identical, defined not by events, but by loss. The number of dead grows beyond what the city can manage. Graves are no longer individual. There is no space, no time, no resources for traditional burials. Instead, large pits are dug at the edges of towns, and bodies are carried in carts, stacked without ceremony. You watch as workers, those who are still strong enough, move quickly, avoiding the weight of what they are doing. There are no prayers spoken for each person, no names recorded, just movement, efficiency, survival, and even that begins to fail. As more people fall ill, fewer remain to maintain the structure of society. Markets begin to close, not by choice, but because there is no one left to run them. Food becomes scarce. Trade slows, then stops. You see abandoned stalls, empty shelves, coins left behind by people who no longer had time to return. The economy, once the pulse of daily life, collapses under the weight of absence. You begin to notice something deeper, something more unsettling than the disease itself. People are changing. Fear begins to reshape behavior in ways you would never have imagined. Some flee the cities, carrying whatever they can, hoping distance will save them. But the disease follows unseen, moving with them into the countryside, into places that once felt safe. Others lock themselves inside their homes, refusing to open doors even to neighbors, even to family. Trust erodes, connection disappears. You see moments that stay with you. A man standing at the doorway of his home, refusing to let his sick wife inside, his face frozen between fear and guilt. A child calling for help from a window unanswered. A group of travelers turning away from a village, choosing not to enter, not to risk it. Survival becomes a solitary act. Compassion becomes dangerous. The institutions that once held society together begin to fracture. You return to the church, hoping for guidance, for answers, for something that makes sense of what is happening. But even here, certainty is gone. Priests continue to pray, to lead processions, to call for repentance. But their voices carry less conviction than before. They too are dying, one after another. The very place that once offered explanation now stands as another reminder of helplessness. Authorities try to impose order, but control slips through their hands. You hear of attempts to isolate the sick, to restrict movement, to enforce rules that no one fully understands. But fear is stronger than authority. People ignore commands, others panic. There is no unified response, no coordinated effort. Each city, each town, each individual is left to face the same invisible threat alone. And the disease continues. It moves faster than news, faster than understanding, faster than any attempt to stop it. It crosses borders without resistance, follows rivers, rides along with merchants and travelers who do not even know they are carrying it. The map of Europe begins to change, not with new territories, but with growing emptiness. You stand once again in a place that used to feel alive, and now it feels hollow. The air is quieter, heavier. The absence of people becomes as noticeable as their presence once was. You realize that what is collapsing is not just population or economy. It is the very structure of how people live together. The invisible bonds that held communities in place have been broken, replaced by distance, fear, and silence. And still, no one truly understands what they are facing. All the theories, all the prayers, all the attempts to explain it, none have revealed the truth. The cause remains hidden, untouched by the knowledge of the time. People fight shadows, blame the air, blame themselves, blame each other. But the real answer remains just out of reach. You look around and see the result of that ignorance. A continent brought to its knees, not by war, not by invasion, but by something no one could see, no one could name, no one could stop. And yet, even now, with everything collapsing, with millions already gone, there is something even more unsettling to realize. No one yet understands what is truly responsible. Because the real enemy is not what they think, it is smaller, closer, already everywhere. If you want to uncover the truth behind what was really causing this devastation, stay with me, because the final chapter will reveal what no one at the time could see. You stand in the aftermath of a world that no longer resembles the one you first walked through. The silence is deeper now, not just the absence of people, but the absence of certainty. For those living in that moment, The answers never came. They searched for meaning in the sky, in the air, in divine judgment, in anything that could explain the scale of what had happened. But the truth was never visible to them. It was too small, too hidden, too far beyond the limits of what they could understand. Centuries later, you begin to see what they could not. What moved through cities, across continents, and into millions of lives was not a curse, and it was not the air itself. It was something biological, something microscopic, something that did not need to be seen to destroy everything in its path. You now know its name, Yersinia pestis, a bacterium. A living organism so small that no one in the 14th century could have ever imagined its existence. But it did not travel alone. To understand how it spread, you have to look closer, not at the people, not at the ships, but at what lived among them. The rats that moved unnoticed through streets, warehouses, and ships were not just part of the environment. They were hosts, and on those rats lived fleas, tiny parasites feeding on their blood. When the rats became infected, the fleas carried the bacteria inside them, and when their hosts died, they searched for new sources of blood. That is when they turned to humans. You imagine it now, knowing what they never could. A flea, nearly invisible, biting into skin, passing the bacteria directly into the bloodstream. No warning, no sign. Just a moment so small, it would never be noticed. And yet from that moment, the disease began its work inside the body, multiplying, spreading, overwhelming everything it touched. This is how it moved. Not through the air in the way people believed, but through a chain of living carriers. Rats traveled with ships, hidden among cargo, thriving in the conditions of trade and transport. Fleas moved with them, adapting, surviving, waiting. Every port that welcomed goods also welcomed the unseen. Every market, every home, every street became part of a network that allowed the disease to spread without resistance. And the conditions of the time made it worse. You remember the narrow streets, the waste left in open spaces, the lack of sanitation. Those details were not just unpleasant. They were the perfect environment for rats to thrive. The closer people lived to these conditions, the easier it became for the disease to move from animal to human, from city to city. The system was already in place long before anyone realized what it could do. What you are seeing now is not just a disease, but a mechanism, a system of transmission built on trade, environment, and biology, operating silently across an entire continent. It did not need intention. It did not need awareness. It simply followed the paths that humans had created for their own survival and expansion. And this is the revelation that changes everything. For those living through it, the Black Death was a mystery, something supernatural, something beyond comprehension. But from where you stand now, you can see it clearly. It was not divine punishment. It was not poisoned air. It was the interaction between a bacterium, a parasite, and a host, repeated millions of times across a connected world. This understanding did not come quickly. It took centuries of scientific discovery, the invention of tools that could reveal what the eye could not see, and the development of knowledge that did not exist in the medieval world. Only then could humanity finally trace the path of the disease back to its source, identifying the true cause behind one of the deadliest pandemics in history. But by then, the damage had already reshaped everything. You look at what came after and begin to understand the scale of its impact. Entire populations reduced, labor shortages that changed the structure of economies, social systems that once seemed unshakable forced to adapt or collapse. The balance of power shifted. The relationship between people, work, and survival was never the same again. The Black Death did not just take lives, it altered the course of history. It forced change in ways that no war or ruler could have achieved. It exposed the fragility of human systems and revealed how deeply interconnected the world had already become, even in a time that believed itself isolated. It marked the end of one era and the beginning of another, setting in motion transformations that would echo for generations. And yet, as you reflect on all of this, one truth stands above the rest. At the time, no one knew. They lived through it without understanding what was happening to them, fighting something they could not see, could not name, and could not stop. The real enemy was always there, moving quietly through the world, hidden in plain sight, carried by creatures so small they were never considered a threat. That is what makes it so powerful and so terrifying, because it reminds you that the greatest dangers are not always the ones you can see, and that the systems you depend on can also be the ones that carry unseen risks within them. You step back from this story now, not just as a witness to the past, but as someone who understands what they could not. You see the connections, the causes, the mechanisms that turned a series of events into a catastrophe that defined an entire century. The Black Death was not just a moment in history, it was a turning point, and the truth behind it remained hidden for hundreds of years, waiting for humanity to finally uncover what had always been there. If this journey helped you see history in a way you never have before, make sure to keep watching, because there are more stories like this, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed.